morning, everybody. Hope we're having a good day.
Hello.
Oh, Graham is back. Yes.
And can you hear me as well?
I can hear you as well.
Yay.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be a live stream without some technical difficulties.
that's right. So I will say this. We can hear you. Whether or not my audience can understand you is going to be another thing.
Yes.
We
I get that.
we have the person who does our social media for the research center is from Scotland as well.
All right.
And when we talk to him on Zoom, I have to put the closed captions on for him because he has a really thick accent. Yours is one of those. If you were a woman, we would all fall in love with you.
All right. I call this my refined speaking voice because I now live in England.
Right.
I have to speak slowly and clearly so people can understand me.
Exactly. That's we Americans can't understand English. That's all I have to say.
We'll struggle through. I'm sure we'll be okay.
We'll struggle through. So good morning, everybody. I'm happy to see people here rolling in. They tend to roll in late. It's 10 o'clock in the morning for me here in California. I know it's 6 o'clock in the evening for you.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, so you're finishing up your day. So
yes, I'm about to have everyone come crashing through the door demanding dinner and things like that. Okay. So you'll have to put up with that.
Got it. So we're happy to have you. So I just want to say some hellos to people who are here. I said hello to people in chat already, but I'll go ahead. Mark, morning. Joe Haney is actually from your side of the world as well. He's from the UK. Nobo Cove fan 87.
I struggle with that name as well. I keep telling him to change it.
He's one of your people.
Yeah, I think he's a recent subscriber.
Yeah, I think this is the first time for him today. Daniel, Mark. Let's see who else. Brian Haig, Cosman, Linda Worth, Brandon, Matt from Fish Fam Link, and Stephen P. Good afternoon, Stephen P. Sketty Nona, Sandy Darty, and then I will say good hello and goodbyes later on for people. So today we have Graham, and Graham has a very interesting YouTube channel. I put the YouTube channel there in the banner. Please subscribe to him. It's a hoot because not only does he talk fish, he gives reviews of local beers. And so how many beers have you tried on your channel?
Well, I have to preface this by saying this is purely for research purposes. This isn't an alcoholic.
Yes, exactly. Thing. That's right. That's why I said you give reviews. I didn't say you get drunk on air. You give reviews.
I think I'm up to about 60 or 70. And we've been trying for a while. I've got a spreadsheet where I track my favorites and least favorites. But it makes for an interesting live stream because I usually do 2 hours on a Friday night here. And by the end of the 2 hours, sometimes it's a little bit, yes, it can.
So how did that start? I mean, what?
How did that start?
What possessed you to start saying, well, you probably had a beer while you give your live stream anyway, because it's Friday night. So then you decided, hey, let's kind of make this part of the show.
So it is a Friday night. So that's the end of the working week for me. It's let my hair down, as you can see.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And then I think you're quite right. I had a beer going once and someone said, oh, why are you drinking that much? You should try this. You should try that. And as a Scotsman, we have a bit of a reputation for being drinkers, I guess. And I've never really been into the whole craft beer scene. It's always just tasted like a mucky puddle, I used to call it.
Okay.
So I thought I'll indulge some of my viewers. One of my subscribers sent me a box of craft beers and said, try these on stream. And then it just became a bit of a thing where people would either send me beers, buy me vouchers, or ask me to try something on stream. And here we are a year later, where I've now refined my palate and know what ones I like and what ones I hate. So it kind of grew over the months and years. So the Friday night live streams is fishy themed.
Yes.
But there's lots of other things going on in there. We often talk about films, we have a quiz, random nonsense that we end up talking about. The long form videos are usually more fish themed and fish centric, but the live stream's a bit of a free for all.
Yes, I will have to be a jerk, as I was on your live stream last Friday. I've been watching your stream for a long time, and I've never entered one of your contests because, here I am, a fish biologist. Even though you'd have a lot of things on your quizzes that are outside of fish, probably half the questions are outside of fish. But if I would lose, I would lose faith. With me, I would say, "Oh man, I'm not worth my salt." And I actually won last week, and of course, I had to make a big deal out of it on the stream. And you kind of put me in my place, saying, you don't have to brag about it. But, I felt pretty good because I got most of the questions outside of fish correct. So
that's one of my favorite parts of the stream is to go through it afterwards and see who got what questions right. Yeah. So you're lucky you answered all the fish ones correctly. So
lucky, that's for sure.
But I do try. I mostly do 20 questions. I try and get 10 loosely fishy themed questions and 10 random things, so everyone gets a bit of a chance.
Yeah, and and your trivia outside of that covers everything. You would think, oh, I'm going to do just the UK because that's where most of my audience is from. But no, I mean, you went all over the place, so that was nice. That
try and keep it some like common events or current affairs or things like that. So this weekend, if anybody wants to get a jump on the quiz questions and do some boning up, it will probably be to do with the coronation. So we've got the King's coronation this weekend, so there might be lots of royal
I'm
questions.
sure that's going to be a big holiday for you, right?
Well, we get a bank holiday and we get Monday off, so that's always good.
So it's just another reason to bring out some beers and try some more, right?
Indeed. I only drink on Fridays. I must make this very clear for any of my friends and families watching.
Yeah, it's like, but it goes into Saturday morning, it's, all, 24 hours worth. That's all you want a week. That's it. That's okay. So just a few questions about you. How long you been into the fish hobby?
Sorry, I saw one of the comments there saying he's a real trooper forcing his way through all those nasty beers.
Yeah.
How long have I been into fish? So I remember having a fish tank as a kid, and it was your general, or my granddad had a tank with a goldfish in it, your stereotypical bowl with a goldfish that lived for 100 years. And then I got one with some neon tetras or something like that, but then they all died, as they tend to do. And I might have been about 8 or 9 then, and then didn't get another fish until I was in my mid-20s, when I've got my own house and we got a small fish tank, and that was fine. I wouldn't have called myself a proper fish keeper then either. It wasn't until I got my first discus, so I'm a big discus guy. I like my discus fish. I stumbled into the discus world by seeing some in a local fish shop. I've told this story many times on my live stream, but for everyone else, I went to a local fish shop and bought 5 discus and thought, that's great, and then learned what a terrible decision that was to buy them there. They were horribly stunted, really ill, all died, but it led me into the world of fish on the internet and doing research and finding out how to care for them properly. And just from there, 1 tank of discus, 2 tank of discus, oh, let's have a fish room, let's go on more and more, trying different things. So maybe for the last, struggling to remember how old I am now, kind of the last 10, 15 years seriously with multiple tanks and actually having an interest in the hobby rather than an ornament in the corner. But that's kind of how it got me to where I am today.
So there was a question early on that someone asked, and they'll be looking at it. This is going to be a surprise to you. And you probably told it many times on your stream. what is your? Let me see. I'm going to get this correctly. The worst incident ever keeping fish.
So this is a clear winner for this. This was about, I want to say, maybe 10 years ago now, where it was over Christmas and my family all live in Scotland. My wife's family all live down south. And we'd gone up to Scotland before Christmas and spent like a week with the family. And then we were coming down to my house for Christmas Day with the other half of the family. And we came home and my big discus tank had sprung a leak at some point, which had spurted water into the electrical outlet, killed all the power in the house, ruined the floor. So we came into an almighty stench of rotting fish. But not only that, the Christmas turkey that was in the freezer was all melted and rotten, and it ruined Christmas. And I'm surprised I'm still here, to be honest. The look that I got from my wife that day, what's happened here? So Christmas Day was spent sourcing carrots and potatoes from neighbours, mopping up dead fish and opening all the windows in the freezing cold, trying to get the god-awful smell out of the house. That was the one time that it really tested my resolve as to whether or not fish keeping was for me.
Yes.
It did not go well. So that's the clear favourite of the worst thing that's ever happened.
You seem to have there's a common theme about leaking tanks with you, isn't there?
Well, some people say it's my unique selling point is I am the disaster. I just haven't met all the disasters that are coming my way yet.
You're the DIY king in this case, but it's the disaster in your fish room king.
So I like to think I'm performing a public service of, because I show everything. I show my disasters as well as my successes. And if I'm trying something, if it works, great, it works. If it doesn't work, at least you know not to do it like that. That's my thing. But yes, I've had a few trials and tribulations. My main one recently is I've been building my own DIY tank. So I've been calling it Mega Tank. So it's like 8 foot by 4 foot by 3 foot. I've been building it for about a year and I just could not get it to hold water no matter what I tried. But that's purposely because I was doing it against the conventional wisdom. So I didn't do it the same way everyone else did because I thought I knew better and I didn't. So I should have just done it the way everyone else does it. But we got there in the end. I now have a big tank holding lots of water. And so far, touch wood, it's been okay for the past 2 or 3 months now.
You know, I feel you because, you know, I built big tanks at our public aquarium in Peru, and they weren't major leaks, it's just pinhole leaks but since it was made out of plywood, even though we fiberglass the plywood and use 2-part epoxy, it would find its way into those tanks. And this went on for 6-9 months. It was so frustrating. Finally, we just tore them all down and end up having tanks shipped in from China, fiberglass tanks. So that's I understand what it's like to be so frustrated that everything you do, it just keeps on leaking.
Yeah, I mean, it made for great content. Everyone really enjoyed my emotional turmoil that I was going through as I was trying to get this thing. And the most frustrating part of it is that I didn't do anything all that different in the end, and it just finally decided to hold water. So I've always got that kind of fear in the back of my mind that it's going to go one day, it's going to go, but no, touch wood, we're okay.
Maybe you should keep that little swimming pool right next to Mega Tank anyway.
It is quite close by, in case, yes.
And if it leaks and it does a stream, it'll stream right into the swimming pool, and you'll be okay. I mean, it wouldn't be that big of a thing.
I did build it with it failing really drastically in mind. I thought this is definitely going to be the worst thing that could happen. So it is built in an area that if it does flood, it's not going to destroy anything other than my hopes and dreams. The house will be fine. It's in the garage. It can flow out to the driveway. That's all fine. But yeah, thankfully, we've got there in the end. And we've learned lots of lessons. So now lots of people have got in touch to say, I've built my own tank, not quite that big, but I know that I shouldn't do it like this that you showed in episode 45. So I've done my thing.
Yeah, for sure. So if you had a bucket list fish, a fish that you've always wanted, but haven't been able to get yet, or for whatever reason, what fish would it be?
So I think my bucket list fish is probably a group. And in the past, I've said it was Oscars, which is a strange thing to say because it's
Yeah.
such a common fish. I had never kept an Oscar until very recently, so they're fairly new to me. I just really loved the idea of them and a large number of them. But my actual bucket list fish is a huge tank full of wild discus because discus is my first love in fish keeping, and
Yeah.
wild discus is probably the pinnacle of the discus hobby. But certainly over here, they're very, very expensive and very, very beautiful. So it's just something that isn't going to be, it won't be bought on a whim. That's something that's going to have to be
Yeah.
saved up for a long time, prepared for. But one day that's the bucket list. All the various oddballs and things like that, they're all really interesting. I do love an oddball, but I'm not breaking my back to get any one particular fish or anything.
Yep.
At the moment, I've got an emperor snakehead in Mega Tank, which is not a fish that I was particularly. It never really crossed my mind. I liked snakeheads. I thought they were cool and interesting fish. But this one, since I've had it, it's so interactive. It's so inquisitive and interesting. That would have been on my, or it should have been on my bucket list. So I'm really glad that I've kept some of the fish that I've kept in the past. But yeah, I don't really put anything on a pedestal of, well, I must get this or I must get that. I don't want to go down the route of the YouTuber that just buys lots of weird fish so as you can make videos about them. I'm very much about the fish that I want to get. I'll get them, and if people like it, great. If they don't, oh well. So wild discus would be the answer to that question, I think. Something you probably have a lot more experience in than I.
Yeah, I have a tank in my garage, my fish room, that has actually 2 tanks of wild discus. They're red spotted greens and greens from Peru. And they're
I do live vicariously through people like you and your tanks.
Yeah. But they're I have them just to have them. Not I don't necessarily want to breed them. So water here in California right now is pretty expensive, and to do full RO water, the adults are in a 125, and then I have some juveniles in a 75, and if you want to keep up with water changes to try to get them to spawn, it runs into the pretty penny. So, most of the time they're just in our tap water, which is liquid rock here. pH 8.4, about 320 microsiemens. And as people know from the audience who watch me, I don't know anything about KH or GH because in science we don't worry about that. All we do is microsiemens. So when people ask me, "What's your KH?" I have no idea what they're even talking about.
Yeah.
I know what it is, but it's not, I've never tested for it at all. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was actually the difference between the hobby there in the UK or in Europe, but specifically the UK, and the hobby here in the United States, in that cost of things are maybe different or maybe the same. So let's say a neon tetra, a typical bread and butter fish that we've all seen in the hobby at any pet store, the big box stores, or your local your live fish stores. So what would be the cost of a neon tetra?
So I had to look this up earlier because I'm always. Is it the price I've told my wife the fish was? Is it the price I know the fish was?
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
I looked on a few sites and noticed that in local shops they're going for around about £3 each, which I think it's something like $1.20 to a pound. So you're kind of talking $4 or $5 a fish, something like that.
Okay. So,
but I remember them being half that price a year ago. So it
yeah.
seems to be a very volatile thing, the pricing of fish, depending on the season, availability, that kind of thing. I bought, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, I bought 100 cardinal tetras for £80, so less than a pound of fish.
Okay. So,
but today that would be twice that.
Yes. Are Do you know if these are European bred or wild fish?
These were wild caught fish, yeah.
Okay, so that's for a wild cardinal. That's a really good price. I mean,
Yeah.
because for even some of the cardinals that we get out of Southeast Asia, they can be, $4 or $5 each. And these are farm raised, massively produced.
That brings in a good point. These are called wild caught fish.
Okay, yeah.
Whether they are or not,
Yeah.
it depends on
Yeah.
the person that's importing them, I guess.
Yeah. I have a friend who just moved to the UK. He was born there, but was raised here in the United States in California. You would think he's a Yankee for sure because he has no accent. But he went back and didn't realize how expensive the hobby is. If you look at like aquariums, things tend to be really expensive in terms of some of the dry goods that's available to you.
It's often a bone of contention when I talk to my American friends and colleagues when they get very excited about the $1 per gallon sale.
Yeah, $1 per gallon sale. Yeah.
Why can't we have something like that?
Yeah.
So it's. I think the swings and roundabouts. There's things that do cost more and there's things that cost less. The thing about the fish that certainly I've noticed, and maybe it's because I feel I'm a curmudgeonly old man, is I quite often go into fish shops and go, "How much?
Yeah,
this was only half that price 2 years ago," and everything seems to be spiraling. Certainly over here in the UK, anyway, it's the energy costs are the biggest thing in the hobby. People, I'm seeing them giving up on their discus tanks because they can't afford to heat the water because the electricity is costing them too much.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen too many complaints about the price of the fish themselves. And again, it depends where if you're sourcing them from your local fish store, then you're paying a premium so that person can keep the roof over their heads and that kind of thing. But there's lots of, you might have seen some of my videos of going to fish auctions where it's club meets and things like that.
Yeah.
There's often good bargains to be held there, and there's lots of groups and societies that will sell fish, and I have a little network of people that we kind of sell our breeding projects onto each other and all that kind of thing. So I don't really buy that many fish all that often, which is why I had to go and check some of the prices.
Sure. And now that the UK is no longer part of the EU, the EU had some really restrictive policies about bringing in livestock and things. Do you think the UK will open up a little bit more, or they'll keep those?
So they seem to have gone with a default position of just, we'll keep everything the same and then we'll start to change all that. That was the way it was sold to us, was we'll start from that position of just keep all the rules the same, but then we decide whether we want to change them or not. But they've screwed everything up so much that they haven't ever got around to doing anything with most of the rules. That's
the least of their worries. They're trying to figure out how to pay for all of it, because they still haven't paid for the tariff or whatever you want to call it, the tax for leaving. So,
yeah. So I don't want to get all political, but yes, that a complete disaster. But in terms of, and I've discussed this with people from across the pond before, it's seen as, like you say, quite restrictive, the animal welfare guidelines, never mind importing and exporting. So while we have things like, we can keep snakeheads or we can keep all these fish that are on restricted lists in other countries, sometimes we can't move them around very easily. And the animal welfare things, which everyone broadly ignores, which is kind of why do you have it in the first place? Like, you're not allowed to post fish. You have to send them through special couriers that are licensed, but there's only one. So you're kind of held to a monopoly. And then one day you're allowed to send shrimp and snails, but not fish. And then the next week it's, oh no, you can send anything you want these days. So getting things imported has just become a bit of a faff. But that's where your local fish shop comes into the to save the day, because they can usually, or any of the ones that I've spoken to have always offered, if you want any fish you want, just ask us, we'll get it on the next list and we'll get it shipped in, and then it makes it a little bit easier. But a lot of my American and even Canadian friends have said that's something that the typical hobbyist might do on their own, because it's just a bit easier. Here's it's a bit tougher, a bit more paperwork.
Yeah, yeah. And so, are there very many local aquarium clubs in UK? You know, here it depends on where you're at. You know, Southern California, we have a couple. You know, East Coast of the U.S. has a lot of clubs. You know, so it's a hit and miss thing. You know, they come and go. So, what are the local aquarium societies like in the UK?
It's probably very similar. Now, obviously, the UK is a lot smaller,
Yes.
but with that comes. I remember talking to someone who was talking about visiting the local fish store, which involved a 2.5-hour drive each way. And that
Okay.
made me think, that's not local. We
Yeah.
have people who moan when they have to drive for 20 minutes to get to their local fish store. But up and down the country, the club scene seems fairly healthy in that most areas are covered by a club of one form or another.
Mhm.
It's more that they're not as well attended, run, publicized. I've been a member of my local fish club for a while, but nothing ever happened other than auctions. So there was very few meets where you got to
Oh,
go
okay.
and speak to
Yeah.
them. They have got lots better in the last 10 years or so, where they do bring in experts to talk about a particular species or someone that's done a trip somewhere, and they'll come and tell us all about that. But the main difference I've seen is over here, a lot of the clubs, rather than being generalists about all kind of fish, you'll have
Mhm.
a guppy club or a Corydoras club or a catfish club, and we're only here to talk about catfish, or we're only here to talk about this. So you have to find your way in to get one of the ones that suits your needs, really. But as far as I can tell, certainly with the internet, most areas are covered. It's just that they're not very well advertised, so you
Mhm.
do have to go and seek them out. It's one of the most popular questions I get on most of my. Anytime I post a video about anything club related, they're saying, "Oh, where can I get? What? When do they meet? What do they do?" And
Yeah.
you really have to search for the information, which is strange when you think about the whole point of a club is to get people together and get them talking
And
about these things
and to try to get more members.
and get more members
Yeah.
so they can
Yeah.
grow and get more money. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's probably because in the olden days, fish clubs were very much the domain of the uber geek or the
Mhm.
uber. I know I'm a fish weirdo, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the real fish weirdos
Yeah.
go to these places.
I
And
resemble that comment, so don't be saying that.
yeah, I resemble it too. But it can be off-putting. The first time I ever went to one, I was petrified. I didn't know what to do, who to talk to. It's not like when you're a kid and you just go head first into these things. This
Yeah.
is okay. Is this normal? Am I being a normal person going to a room full of strange people and talking about fish?
I
I'm
hope
not
no
sure
one
about this.
sees me, no one recognizes me, you
Yeah,
know, because it's always, you know, no, it's not like you go out to public and talk about these things with people. You
I
know,
know.
a lot of people, they hear you have fish, oh, you know, they have this idea that the aquariums are going to stink. You know, you know, is it hard to take care of fish? You know, they have all these ideas that really aren't true for the most part for serious hobbyists. You know, you walk into a
Yeah,
serious hobbyist house, they may not even have any tanks in the main house. They're probably gonna have a fish room. You know,
and that's one of the things I think is missing from the club scene over here is there isn't really anything for the beginner,
mhm.
for the introduction to fish keeping. And I've toyed with the idea a few times of trying to get something off the ground. We've talked about it on my streams as well, of having fish meets or fish events and having somewhere for the normal person to come and ask questions, the person who's got children that fancy an aquarium,
Yeah.
somewhere safe to ask questions and get sensible answers, because a lot of your Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff, they're very adversarial. They're
Oh,
very,
there, yeah.
it's just not a nice place to
No.
promote a hobby. And I'm all about promoting the hobby in a positive way. So I'd
Yeah.
like to have something where you could send these people to say, well, if you're interested and want to learn more without being patronized, without being aggressively called an idiot or whatever it might be, that's the thing I mean, and don't get me wrong, most of the clubs that I've had any engagements with have all been fine.
Yep.
But it's that missing step of how do you go from being slightly interested and wanting to learn a little bit to uber geek and wanting to know everything about everything. There's a bit of a disconnect, I think.
And it used to be you would go to your local fish store to get, good information. But, I go to pet stores, unless it's, ones that I've been going to for a long time. And they just have people working there that, don't really know the hobby, don't really understand what fish you can put together, don't understand the fish at all. Want to sell you a red-tailed catfish in a 10-gallon tank. Is, oh yeah, it'll be fine there.
Yeah.
It's like,
and that's the thing, we're losing out on good local fish stores.
Yeah.
So we have the equivalent, I guess, is your PetSmart and Petsco over there. We have what's Pets at Home, where, and I don't like to bash them because I have been to some stores where the people who are there genuinely care about the fish and they do know and they are enthusiasts. But there's also, for every good enthusiastic employee, there's one who it's just a job. They're there. They're not an expert in fish. They're not even interested in fish. They just happen to be covering the fish section, and they go through their list of questions. And that's it. So you're 50-50 if you're going to get a good experience there. The good local fish stores, they're just so few and far between. They're closing down all the time. They're being hit by the energy crisis over here. They're being hit by rising costs everywhere. There's some really good ones local to me, but anytime I speak to them, they're struggling because they just can't make it work.
Did COVID hit the pet trade very hard there?
It probably did in the same way that it hit everything else. So everything shut down for a while. I talked to, I had a relationship with a fish shop in a place called Oldham called Fishman Aquatics, which is now just shut down. Again, another example of a good one going by the wayside. They did all they could to keep open because we were only allowed to keep, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the term, it's like you had to be an essential service to be able to open. So they had to argue the case that people needed to buy fish food or buy fish equipment or whatever it might be and managed to keep open, but there's just no passing trade. There's no footfall because everyone else is quite rightly keeping indoors or keeping out the way. So it was a really tough time for them there. I mean, to be fair, I think the government did do a lot in terms of grants and things like that to keep people afloat, but it was just a big, massive impact all through the chain. So getting deliveries was hard, and then there was no customers when you did get a delivery, so you're just sitting on stock all the time. So I think it did have quite an impact. Yeah,
in America, they, pet stores were considered an essential resource because of people in their pets. But the local fish store that I always go to that know me very well, my wife's been going there for 40, 50 years now. They had problems just getting in fish stock because the airlines were shut down. Then when they did, they weren't doing cargo. And so, every time I'd go in there, they would, ask, did you have any fish to sell? Did you get any fish from Peru? Please bring us. Do you know anybody? Because it was dreadful, and a lot of their suppliers just shut down and never opened back up. Because they couldn't make it, and yet this is a family store that's been in their family for 40, 50 years. They don't want to shut down because their whole family depends on it. So it was pretty tough for a lot of the pet stores here.
I think it had quite a knock-on effect as well, even after everything started to open back up. Because all the wholesalers, so a lot of the UK trade is supplied by Europe, so Holland and places like that.
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, and when they couldn't fill their order books, they had to let people go. And then when everything opened back up again, they were a tenth of the size they were beforehand. So it took them a good couple of years to ramp back up again. So even after the country had opened back up again, it was still scarce to find good stock anywhere. A lot of the people I know who worked in local fish stores were saying the same thing. They were relying on breeders, local breeders at home to bring in their projects so they could sell them.
So we had a question in chat probably 10, 15 minutes ago, and I can't find it now. I was going to say who asked it, but the question was, and I'll let you answer it: are wild discus harder to keep than domestically bred discus? In your eyes, what do you think?
I don't think they are any harder. I've been talking to people who have kept them. I think it's harder to acclimatize or acclimate, depending on what side of the pond you're on. But once you've got them used to your water, my understanding is they're no different to anything else. I think there's a lot done, whether it's wild discus, domestic discus, Asian discus, German discus. They all make claims about we are better at this, or we can handle hard water, soft water, this, that, the other. My experience is that all discus will, whatever your water is, if you can get them used to it, they'll thrive in it. There isn't a hard water discus or a soft water discus or a tap water discus. They're just, I think they're put on a little bit of a pedestal to say, oh, well, these are the kings of the freshwater aquarium. You have to be an expert to keep them, and oh, they're really difficult, and you must do 100% water changes every week. It's just not true. It's one of those myths that just seems to hang around all the time. So I think they're harder to keep in that psychologically, because they're a little bit more expensive, and discus are already expensive. You might be a bit more worried, so you'll be constantly testing your water or fretting that you're doing something wrong. But generally, they're as easy or as difficult as you want to make them.
I think what people do wrong with discus is they don't feed them enough. Discus feed all day long. I mean, all your aquarium fishes will eat all day long. They'll eat till they're, they'll eat till they're bloated, because in the wild, they don't know when they're going to eat the next time.
Yeah,
and I have found that people tend to underfeed their discus. True. The more you feed, the more waste is going to be there. But I really think that one of the major problems that people have with discus is they just underfeed them.
And there seems to be lots of guides. Certainly when I was first getting into discus, it was always feed whatever they'll eat within a 5-minute period. I've never had a discus that did that.
No.
They graze for hours sometimes. And I always tell people, no, just feed, and if it's still there 6 hours later, that might be a bit too much. But they are not as delicate as they're made out to be either. I don't think they're more tolerant than they're given credit for. I know there's lots of debate about discus diets and whether they're detrivores or herbivores or carnivores or some mix of everything. It's really hard to, in my mind, when people are talking about keeping discus and they say that they're trying to keep it in as natural environment as possible, and then you see their tanks and it's pristine sand and it's lovely tropical plants. Have you ever seen the pictures of people where they filmed the discus in the rivers? That does not look like that. No,
not at all. The typical Amazon biotope that you see in people, Amazon swords and all the, no, that's not what those rivers are like. The only plants you have in most of the rivers that I've been to, that I've snorkeled, that I've filmed in, that I've caught fish and discus in, the only plants you see are maybe water hyacinth, water lettuce, and plants that are coming in from the shore that are terrestrial plants. All these Amazonian plants that we have in the pet trade tend to be in the Pantanal of Brazil and other parts of the Amazon in the floodplains. They're plants that
they're
grow
just tolerant of the same warmer waters rather than a biotope.
We tend to have this idea of how we should keep the discus, not realizing what they're all about in the environment. And I think that the biggest thing we should do is originally try to match the water from where you got your discus from. If you buy locally bred discus and they're kept in the tap water, your well water, whatever water you have, local source, that's what you should use at first. Then, if you want to do RO, do RO with wild fish. But if they're over into the tap water and doing fine, why change unless you're trying to breed, you want to go into business. Those aren't
breeding is
hobbyists,
definitely different. Yeah.
that's something that, I never really talk about because I'm a hobbyist. I don't, I have some discus breeding, but it's not like I intended them to breed. It's not like I go into business to breed them. I give more of the babies away than I've ever sold in my life. So,
yeah,
I'm not a business person. That's why I'm a biologist. I'm an academic, not a business person.
I used to hobby. I struggle saying that. As I was about to say, I used to breed discus.
Mm-hmm.
I was very much not involved in the process.
Yeah.
I used to have discus that would breed for me sometimes, and I went down that rabbit hole of, right, we need to hit a specific TDS. We need to have arrow and remineralize with the specific remineralization powders. And then I realized, well, I'm doing that so as when they do breed, I get a yield of 60 fish rather than 40 fish.
Yeah.
I don't need 60 fish. So why am I, what's the point in this? So I completely agree. If you're doing it as a business, then you might want to maximize all these things, but sometimes you're just making it harder for yourself. Because with that day when you don't get your mix right and you make them sick because you're giving them something they're not used to, you're just creating more problems for yourself.
And what are you going to do with all those babies?
Yeah.
Because
I love discus, not everyone else does.
It's hard to locally source them, because people have that reputation of discus being hard and what am I? Okay, I'll buy one. No, you can't buy one. You need at least 6 or 7 in a group to make them feel comfortable, especially when they're juveniles. But it's one of those things.
And when I was breeding, I ended up giving away more than I ever sold, just because I was running out of space and getting overwhelmed. Because when you do get discus breeding, they don't stop; they just keep going.
Yeah. So I just want to say hello to a couple of people. Buenos dias, Fernando. They're in Peru. Fernando is the nephew of our resident director in Peru, and he actually works at the research center. And one of my students was here earlier, Evaninsky. Good morning, Evan. Wonder if you're still here. Maybe you should start studying for finals. We have finals coming up soon, so Evan's in my fish biology class, so he needs to start studying.
This doesn't count as revision, no.
No. This is not a review session here. Let's see. Nope. And we have any questions for Graham? There's been some questions, but I have not.
I'm trying to look back through myself.
Okay, so just out of curiosity,
of anyone who's ever watched my streams, you'll know this is my superpower is not to be able to keep up with chat or read the questions properly. Yeah, but I'll see if I can get on. That's all one question about. Do discus really need to be kept in that warm a temperature? That's the one thing that puts me off is the cost of heating.
Yeah.
What do you think to that one? I'll let you answer before I say something and you can disagree with
it. When we catch discus in the wild in Peru, the temperature is about 81. So, about 20, 29, 28 degrees Celsius. I think as you reduce the temperature, it's not that you can't keep them in there, but their immune system is slightly depressed. Their metabolism slows down. And, in long term, I think it's probably not the best for them. But, I know some people want to keep them 86, 88 degrees. Sure, you can do that, but that's going to, you're going to have to feed even more. It's something that, no, the higher temperature, the better for them. There is a range of temperature with all fish, and we've caught sometimes when the river's been 25, 26 degrees C, 77, 78 degrees for you non-metric people. And the fish look healthy, but it's not going to be long-term at that temperature.
Yeah.
That's going to be really when the water's coming up. During the flood season, at the start of flood season, as all that rain goes into the water, temperature does go down somewhat.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of the so the higher temperature seems to. I've never had a discus with ick or white spot or whatever we call it these days, because I think the higher temperature drives away a lot of those things. So when you bring them down, that certainly in some of the discus groups that I've been a member of has been something of, oh, you can't keep them in those lower temperatures because they will get sick. It's no, if they're not getting sick because it's a high temperature, doesn't mean that you can't keep them slightly cooler. But yeah, the long-term effects might be something you need to look into. When I first started keeping it, it was you need to keep them at 30 to 32. Mm-hmm. And then the perceived wisdom went, oh no, it's between 28 and 30. And now lots more people are saying 26. And like you say, I mean, if you measure, so there's a couple of disreputable discus groups that I've had run-ins with in the past who have said, well, if you go to the Amazon and measure the temperature of the water, it's 30 degrees. Like, well, it might be one day.
Yeah, exactly.
It might not be the next day. And it's certainly not that year round. I don't think they're seasonal fish like you get with some fish where they need to have anything like that. But I think they can be a bit more tolerant of a wider range of temperatures. I think it's best, as you said earlier, try and match the natural conditions as far as possible. Okay, you might not be able to recreate an Amazon River biotope, but you can get the temperature right. You can get the water parameters there or thereabouts. But the days of saying you have to keep them at 32 degrees, I think they're long gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, So you want to take the question from Nabo? And discus, can you discuss, use of resources on wild parameters, fish biology, and how something like Corydoras, like you said, Corydoras and not Corydora, enjoy cooler temps, but it's often said they are so domesticated that wild parameters don't matter.
Yeah, I've certainly heard that said before. I don't know how true it is. I don't know is my honest answer. That's
well, if we're talking about domestically bred fish, farm raised, whatever, they're so far removed from the wild variety that again, when they breed for you, they are selecting for whatever water parameters you have them in. So, if you keep, there are some cories that like cooler water. It really depends upon the species. But when we breed them in our own tanks, and when they breed in the wild, the babies that survive are the ones that are adapted for those water conditions. And so over generations, the only ones that then will breed and survive are the ones adapted to those parameters. It's the same thing happens in, overseas in Southeast Asia when they breed them in the big farms. You're selecting for whatever's happening on those farms, or you're selecting for whatever's happening in your tanks. And so the wild parameters become less important to them.
And there's some fish where things like temperature have an effect on the ratio of males to females. Yeah. So things like that cut into it. So the previous question about the discus, obviously the discus that we have in our tanks, the Asian ones, they just don't exist in the wild. They are color morphs that have come across, but that doesn't mean that they don't still appreciate a certain range of temperatures. You're not going to get one that is happy to live in cold water, because that's not something that gets selectively bred in or bred out. But yeah, I like the survival of the fittest. That is a thing. It's if it breeds, it's because those parameters were right for those fish.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
That's a trait that will get carried on.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a biologist, but you think you have to think.
My wife's a biologist, so I've had this discussion many times.
Yeah, I don't like to. I tend not to want to be so technical, so scientific on my live streams, because I'm a hobbyist like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to really understand about me is I enjoy fish. I study fish. Yes. I'm surrounded by fish, but I enjoy it as a hobby. And I've been, enjoying it as a hobby for 50 years. And, my hobby led me to being a scientist, not the other way around. I know scientists who study fish who have never kept fish.
Yeah.
And so they, especially a lot of developmental biologists who use zebra danios in their work. We have a person at our university who studies zebra danios, not because they like fish, but they like what's happening in the fish. And it's easy to manipulate a fish and much more ethical than doing that to humans.
Yeah.
Zebra daniels are the model animal, in for a lot of studies. So, it's
I've heard that as well, and I must admit, I have a big fondness for guppies.
Yes,
and it's almost exclusively because you get to see the life cycle so immediately. It's there in front of you. You can see two fish of different strains and the offspring. You can see the actual differences, and you can breed things in and out and move them around. And that's it's fascinating to me. It's one of the things I think that such overlooked fish sometimes. It's only guppies, but they're amazing when you spend some time with it. And it's because it happens so quickly and right in front of your eyes.
It's for those people who line breed fish, whether it's discus or guppies or any of these varieties, to take the time to get a blue diamond discus or a leopard discus, a panther discus. I mean, imagine the amount of time it took to fix these traits. So you have a blue diamond breeding with a blue diamond, you're getting a blue diamond, not a mix of whatever like you see in goldfish sometimes, or in koi, where the cheap koi that you get from your big box stores, when they breed, you may get all brown carp from them because it's not a line bred fish. So I often think about that, the time it took, the number of fish it took to get to where we are today.
Somewhere it was given to me by a discus breeder, and it goes through the history of all the strains and how they made them, and it's years and years and years of effort to get something that we now kind of take for granted and say, oh yeah, that's a blue diamond, or that's a red Turk, or whatever.
If we all knew the history of the fish that we keep in our hobby that are domestically bred, in some ways I think we'd have a greater appreciation for that blue ram that you have, or I'm not into long fin, and the worst thing for me in the hobby are bubble body or balloon body fish.
Balloons, I was going to say, they drive me crazy as well.
And I don't have that big of a problem with the genetically modified Danios and things, the glowfish. I don't have that big of a problem. I have a problem with dyed fish.
Yeah,
we used to see a lot of dyed fish in my area.
And tattooed fish was a thing for a while.
People go crazy over that. It's like, no, or the parrot fish that we see, the blood red parrots. In some ways, I have a problem with those because they're grotesque looking. I'm sorry for those out there who like your blood red parrots, but a true parrotfish, a wild parrotfish, looks so much different than that. And I appreciate wild fish for what they are. A lot of people don't like wild discus because they're not colorful enough for them. To me, nothing is more beautiful than like a blue moon heckle these days, that are very, very expensive coming out of Brazil, or even a wild brown discus, because they're gorgeous looking fish, and I can appreciate them for what they are. Not say, oh, I wish they had more blues in it, or more green body, but because I understand what's going on in the wild, I do have a greater appreciation for those type of fish.
I've noticed as well that there seems to be a lot more of a lean back towards the wild look of, certainly with discus again. we have over here breeders like Punchard's Discus and things like that, where they're all the Elenker types, and they're all just very slight variations on the wild themes. Certainly that's what I've been most attracted to throughout my hobby, and I'm seeing more and more people certainly commenting on my videos saying, "Oh yeah, I really like that one. What is that?" And you're like, "That's almost a wild fish. That's the look you want if that's what you're after." I've just seen Ali Shan saying yellow wild discus are gorgeous. I've never seen a yellow one.
They're kind of they're a brown discus. Well, the problem is, what's a brown discus? What's a blue discus? What's a green discus? That's the problem. Their body is more tannish to a yellow color. Not like you have the bright yellows, the Marlboro reds that go into the yellow coloration. It's not quite lemon yellow, more of a brown tan yellow.
I shall look them up afterwards.
Yeah. They're coming out of Brazil. That's where most discus will be Brazil. Yeah.
I'm just seeing Nabokov fan saying, one thing I try and pay attention to is the cooler water equals add more oxygenation for those species. That is something that I've been caught out in the past with. Keeping discus at warmer temperatures is harder to get, or not harder to get oxygen into the water. It's just something you need to be aware of.
Yeah.
And a lot of the water treatments like Prime and Safe and things like this, you only need a half dose when you're running at that sort of temperature. So you can easily overdose medications when you're running warmer tanks as well.
Yeah. So there's been someone knocking at my door for 5 minutes. So talk to the group.
I shall take over. Welcome everyone to the Aquarium Adventures live stream. And to Brian, who asked the question earlier, no, this is pure Pepsi Max. There's no vodka in my drink tonight. Brian saying, my corridors are doing fine at 26 at the moment, but seem lazy. I mean, sometimes the cooler waters for any fish, whether it's discus, corridorus, or whatever it might be, if you keep them at warmer temperatures, you need to treat them a certain way. You need to feed them more. They might be more lethargic when it's cooler. They might be more energetic when it's warmer. So that's probably a universal thing. What about flower horns? Those are man-made. Well, yeah, I do have a special place in my heart for flower horns. It's almost my channel mascot is my flower horn called Humphrey. But yes, I remember we had what was it? PETA did a thing about rewilding and demanding that the aquarium hobby just shouldn't exist anymore, and they were all against us keeping fish and that we should rewild all our fish. And I made a video about it with my flower horn going, where exactly do I rewild this to? This doesn't exist in the wild. It's a very strange way to go about things.
I can appreciate flower horns for their colors.
Colors and personality. That was the thing that drew them to me.
But it's, you know what? I'm not quite sure how I feel about flower horns as a hobby.
Well, I mean, I'm a hypocrite, so I would have 100% agreed with you on the parrotfish. Yeah. But I have a flower horn, so I wouldn't keep. In fact, I saw some. What were they called? King Kong parrotfish.
Yeah.
Which were like the worst traits of the man-made parrotfish, all dialed up to 11. But the guy was so proud of them. I felt really sorry, saying, it's just not my thing.
It's like a pug dog, the smashed in face, I was in China right before COVID hit, November, right before COVID. I was a judge at CIPS, which is China's largest pet trade show. And so they had, competitions for arowanas, you name it. They had competitions for everything, and they had a huge competition for flower horns. And the winner of the flower horn competition, I think, got $10,000. So the Asian farmers are really going to the next level when it comes to the flower horns.
Oh yeah.
I've
seen some of the prices of them as well.
Yes.
So mine was, again, it was a subscriber who said, I import these flower horns. Would you like one for your channel? And I was always a bit like, I don't know anything about them. No. So eventually Renee said, yeah, I'll go in there, I'll have one. And that was my flower horn called Humphrey. But I think if you were to buy that strain, I can't keep up with the naming conventions of them because they seem to make them up and then change them every 6 months. But you're talking like 400 or 500 quid.
Yeah.
For a fish.
You got, I know what a quid is, but many of our channels don't know quid is equivalent to pounds.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Using my colloquialisms again.
Yes. Yeah. At the one fish store that I go to a lot, when they have flower horns, and every flower horn tank, they have no pictures allowed, because what they were finding is that people were taking pictures of their flower horns, posting them online for sale. And they were, jack up the price, and people were buying the flower horns from the secondary market.
Yeah.
And when the store owner found out, he was just livid. So they really don't allow any photos taken this, unless they know you. Like, I can go and take photos of anything I want to.
Yeah.
So I've been going there for so long, and but someone walk in the store and start taking pictures of their flower horns, they really get very irate with that, because in some ways you're taking business away from them, because people, you walk in a store, you not only buy your fish, but you'll go in and buy your food for the fish. So they're taking away the entirety of what a fish store is really all about.
I witnessed a very heated argument of almost exactly that thing, where there's a fish store near here that's kind of famous over here. It's called Wharf Aquatics, and they do specialist fish as well as they do your neon tetras and all that. So they have rays, arowana, flower horns, whatever it might be. And someone was taking pictures of Mabu puffers, which I think they were selling for something like £150, and were being challenged by one of the members of staff to say, you're that guy that's posting them on Facebook selling them for £200. And they were having a proper Barney, as we would call it over here, an argument with each other. But the guy who was doing the crime was adamant that this was above board. He's saying, you only ask £150. I'm going to come in and buy it for £150 and sell it tomorrow for £200. And they were, but yes, it's despicable when it's just ripping somebody off.
Well, I had that happen to me at a local fish auction. Sold a wild tiger knife fish that I brought in from Peru, and it sold for pennies at our local fish auction. Our local fish club. They always ask me, well, bring in something unusual. Then when I bring it in, they don't want to buy it because they don't know anything about it. So I stopped doing that. But the guy bought it for $5 from me, which was outrageously cheap. And then he was in Facebook Marketplace that same afternoon with my bag, with my number on that bag, selling it for $40. And it's like, I emailed him, said, I don't mind you doing this, but don't be so overt with it. It's your fish now. You can do whatever you want to, but I feel a little disrespected when you do it immediately as you get home, but they're, people.
They do it with my local fish club. When I go to the auctions, and I've had to stop myself from making this point every time I make my videos, because I know I'm going to get spotted at one of them in the future. But there's a guy who is part of the club who goes and undersells or underbids on loads of fish, and you see them within hours all over the internet. And you're thinking, I saw you buy that fish for £1, and now you're asking for a £5.
Yeah.
And again, he's of the opinion nobody else wanted it. I wanted
Yeah,
it. I bought it.
yeah,
It's a business. It's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
a
It's a
bit
business,
underhand.
and and to me, a fish club shouldn't be about trying to make business. Fish club should be about trying to educate people, trying to bring fish that you may be breeding at home that no one else has. So but in some ways I can't fault them, but in other ways I feel like you're doing the club and the hobby a disservice when you do that.
Yeah, I think that's. I made the suggestion that they should have higher reserves to stop that happening. Because I think if it was me and I had bred a bunch of discus and had taken them in and they just didn't go for very much, if the person wanted them, I'd be fine with that. But if they don't want them and they just want to flip them, I'm less fine with that. And well, maybe I'm the problem. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I'm not a business person, so I don't understand the business mindset. But yeah, there's a point where I don't know. I don't want to get into that because then
we're turning this into the curmudgeonly old men
podcast. Yeah, exactly. You're quite a bit younger than me. There's no doubt. So I'm
Scottish, so I've got a lower life expectancy.
That's right. You come with it with an expectation because you're bred into that, right? That's part of your genome. Okay.
I might only be 45, but I have the brain of a 75-year-old.
Okay. Yeah. I just turned 63. So yeah, I'm quite a bit older than you. So I've come with it with age. You come with it with your upbringing and your nationality. Let's see. Any other more questions for Graham?
Yeah, only been asked, what is a pound?
yeah. People, that was more of a joke.
That,
Stephen Pease, that was more of a joke. So this was something I was going to ask, and Nobo actually asked it in chat is, you have your discus tank right next to your front door, correct?
I do, yes.
And so are they, how do they react to people walking in and out of there? Or are they used to it by now?
They're used to it. No one ever uses my front door, I should say. So that it's not as high traffic an area as you might think, but they're in the hallway. They're in the main hall. So I have 3 kids. They run around like lunatics constantly. My wife and I, our bedroom's opposite the fish tank, so we're in and out there all the time. I get the concern because I have experienced that with skittish fish and being shy and fighting all over the tank, but no, they got used to it very quickly. The only problem with it is it's quite a big hallway and it's not very well insulated. So during the winter, it costs an absolute fortune to keep that tank. I remember you talking about that on one of your live streams, of that it's not the best place for it because of the cold drafts and everything. Yeah.
The question, the fish that I have that's the most skittish fish have a group of 6 wild Oscars that I've had since they were 5-6 centimeters, 2 or 3 inches, you guys, and now they're adults and they're in a big 150-gallon tank and they're afraid of everything. You walk up to the tank, even to feed them, you walk up to the tank, the first thing they do, they all go and cower in a corner, all of them. It's like Oscars have this reputation of being mean fish.
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite with these. And it's not like they're mistreated. No one pounds on the tank or anything. It's, unbelievable how bunch of wimps they are.
That was my introduction to discus, to Oscars rather. I was saying earlier that I'd always wanted to keep them, but never had. Just fact of chance that I'd never got around to keeping them. When I forgot my first ones, I was so disappointed because I had that same opinion. Thought, well, discus, they're the big mean. I keep saying discus. Oscars are the big mean brutes of the fish world, and they just cowered in a corner, looking at me as if I was going to chop them up and eat them for dinner. It wasn't until I put them into my big mega tank that it brought them out of themselves for some reason. I don't know whether it's having another big fish in there showed them, oh, it's not that scary after all. But yeah, they've totally come out of their shell.
Yeah, I put in other fish that, act as dither fish. And in fact, I one time I had pink convicts that were breeding me out of house and home. I bought 6 pink convicts as juveniles from our local fish auction for $5. I ended up with 3 pairs. They're great parents, even in a community tank. So at one time I must have had 1,000 pink convict babies. So I thought, okay, what do I do with these babies? And the pet stores here don't want them.
Yeah.
I can't even give them to them. So I thought, okay, I don't like feeding live fish to my fish. I just don't like doing that for, a lot of potential parasites and things of that sort. I said, well, I should have euthanized them, but no. So I put them in the big tank with my Oscars, thinking, okay, the Oscars will go crazy over them. They didn't even touch a single one of those baby pink convicts, nothing. And so now, at one point I had a 150-gallon tank with 6 large Oscars and 100 small pink convicts, and it's like it just got out of hand. So they're not even that predacious as I thought they would be. I guess they're used to eating, the pellets that I give them, and they're
the flakes and the tablets. Yes,
the pellets now. They don't know what a live food is anymore.
Yeah, I did that. I had a similar experience with Crebensis a few years ago, where I got a pair of Crebensis, and within about 6 months, I must have had 1,000. And I was literally going miles and miles out of my way to fish shops saying, please just take some. I don't want money for them. Just please take a couple of bags. I don't know what to do with them all.
So Brian has a question that he said he saw a listing for 10 tiger Darios. And what's the chances of a female in there?
Oh, I mean,
well, if they're juveniles, they're unsexable.
I was going to say 50-50 if you
they don't tell you. They say if you buy 6, then there's a 50-50 chance based upon, the odds that you do. So with 10, I would say there's probably a much better chance than 50-50 that you'll get at least one female or one male if they're all females. So yeah, unless they're adults already and you can sex them, but that's I'm not sure where you live, Brian. I suspect you're in the UK. That's just my expectation.
My neck of the woods.
Yeah, so
yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm often asked on my live streams or videos, oh, how do you sex fish, or how do you tell us? I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you say you're a hobbyist that's turned scientist, I'm a hobbyist that hasn't turned scientist.
Yeah.
The list of things I don't know is way up here. The list of things I do know is way down here.
I tell them, when I give talks to clubs, they want to ask you about certain fish, and I say outright, you probably know more about your specific fish than I do. As a scientist, I don't study every fish.
Yeah.
I study, a handful of fish, and I know those fish inside and out. I know a lot about, certain families of fish, but a specific species of fish that I've never kept, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh yeah, I know this, I'll do my best guess based upon what I know about that family and where their fish are from. But yeah, they sometimes are more knowledgeable than fish biologists about fish in general.
I'm the same with diagnosing illnesses or suggesting medications. I'm like, I just make videos about fish. That does not mean don't take advice from me. Yeah. I just saw that comment from Liquid Zoo there. Sex them. I don't even know them.
Yeah.
I just remember the look on we were in a fish shop with one of my kids, and somebody had come in to ask the owner if they could sex their fish, and he was like, Dad, what are they saying that they're going to do to that fish? I'm like, no. Tell what sex it is. Not okay.
Yes. Yeah. So, question was asked: what's the most popular aquarium brand in the UK? I mean, is there one manufacturer that does most of the tanks, or is it European? You know, the Marineland and Fluval, or some of the big ones
Fluval,
here.
Fluval are definitely a main player. Jewel is another one. Smaller ones from Dennerley and people like that. So we have a lot of the European brands make their way over here. But yeah, I think the front runners are probably Jewel and Fluval. One of the bigger kind of chain stores is called Maidenhead Aquatics, and they do a lot of tanks that are called Aqua Oak, and they're more kind of old shaker style oak frame, oak cabinetry and all that kind of thing. Other than that, the majority of things you see are your generic small tanks that you don't really know who makes them. They're just branded by whatever shop that's selling them that day.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few bespoke tank builders, so there seems to be a thriving custom tank scene. Or certainly there's lots of companies out there doing it. So my discus tank that's in the hallway, that's by a company down here, but that was one of, for the size of the UK, that was one of about a dozen or more that I could have chosen from that were asked to build my tank. So generally the big brands are more of the European one. I don't know if you know names like JBL and things like that. Do you have them over in the US?
No.
So they're Germany seems to be very prominent in our hobby. So there's lots of German brands for dry goods and things like that as well. So equipment and foods and tanks, they're generally outside the big names. They're the ones that we see. So Marineland isn't a thing. Lots of, even until very recently, hang-on back filters weren't a thing over here. You could not find them for love nor money here. They've only, and unless I've just been looking in all the wrong places, they've only in the last few years started to show up in the kind of mainstream. But yeah, we don't see a lot of the filters I hear my American friends talking about. I know of them, but you can't go out to a shop and buy them or even get them on the internet usually.
And there's no way you're going to find a $1 a gallon.
Unfortunately not.
Place. You know, it's maybe $4 or $5 a gallon. You know,
well, the thing that really grinds my gears about that is we can't even get secondhand tanks for that cheap.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about, and I think this is universal because I've heard some Americans talking about this as well. People seem to buy a fish tank, and if it costs them $100, when they come to sell it, they seem to suddenly think it's worth $150.
Yeah.
I don't know why they think it appreciates value rather than depreciates. I'll never figure that one out.
Yep. So, question was, do you know Ian Fuller and Mark Duffel?
I know of them. I don't know them. So Ian being, I think, the person who runs the Catfish Convention or the literally wrote the book on quite a lot of the things.
Yeah, exactly.
So there'll be people that will do appearances, for want of a better word, at some fish club events and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually met Ian at a restaurant in Iquitos, Peru one day. I walked into this restaurant with my friends there, and Ian walked up to me and said, "Oh, hi Anthony, I'm Ian Fuller." And I was like, "How do you know me? You know, I'm a nobody. You're the Corey god. I mean, how do you know me?"
Yeah.
You know, we actually had mutual friends, and his friends told him that I was going to be there. So, he looked me up before he went there. But it was like, hey, I felt pretty good about myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of people think that we know everybody in the fish hobby, the big names, when we really don't. I don't get much.
It's an often repeated thing is I get asked a lot of questions. So it's on me. I chose to make videos on the internet about fish. So people then ask me a lot of questions about fish. And I always have to say, well, I'm not an expert in this. I have a camera. That's my one qualification here. That I keep getting asked all these questions about things, and I'm saying the people who know the most aren't on YouTube. So stop looking for your experts on YouTube. They're busy learning more and refining their knowledge and writing books and doing all this kind of thing. And that's your Ian Fullers and people of that ilk. And I have been lucky enough to meet some of. I've never met Ian, but I have met some what I would call big names in the industry, where you meet someone and you know this guy knows their stuff or this girl knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about. This is where I should be directing people who ask me these questions. So, for instance, Brian there's asking a question in chat saying, how many times a day do both of you get asked, how many fish can I keep in a tank of this size? That sort of question, I don't get asked every day, but it is quite to the point where I'm now quite facetious about it, and I realize I must stop myself doing this. And they'll say, oh, I've got so many fish this size. How will it fit in that tank? And I'm going, well, if it's that size, yes, it'll fit in that tank. Is it a good idea? No. And then I end up ranting about it and saying, oh, because you need to factor in this, that, and the other. I even considered printing up cards that just had like a QR code to the video that I made about it. It said, save you some time. Go and look at that video.
Yeah, my answer is, well, you can't really give a good answer to that without knowing the conditions. How many times a week do you plan to do water changes? What kind of fish is it? A goldfish is much dirtier than Corydoras. Then they just want you to tell them, okay, how many can I have? It's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
I have a short on my channel where we have 1,000 neon tetras in a 29-gallon tank. Screw that 1 inch a gallon rule, but that thing gets a 90% water change every day. It's, pH is 5. So you don't get ammonium buildup. It's not a toxic form. So, so it really depends on the condition of your tank. But people don't want to hear that for sure. That's for sure.
And certainly the thing about YouTube is you very rarely are you asked the question genuinely. So on live streams and things like that, I think it's very different because it seems to be a more familial feel and people are generally there because they're interested. But 99% of the people who ask questions on YouTube videos are trying to start a fight more often than not. They want you to say something so they can disagree with it. And there's just no way to win sometimes. That's why I always preface, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not God about this. I made a video of when I was going through my mega tank troubles, where I took every piece of advice that I'd had in the previous few videos. And it was literally impossible to do. And these were all people who were convinced you need to do this because this is the only thing that will work. And it could be said for any of my videos. I just happened to pick that mega tank thing. If I do all of these, I need 15 different tanks because you cannot do them all together. They cannot all possibly be right. So one of you's got to be wrong and none of you are willing to be wrong. So where do we go from here? It's a no-win game.
So there's a question a few minutes ago. What's your favorite tank that you've done? Aquascape that you started from nothing.
Oh, there's a question. So I'll preface this saying I'm not an aquascaper. I'm definitely a very amateur. But I did a small. In fact, no. I used to have the tank. It used to be there, but I did it with stuff that I found in a river. So everything that I could find nearby or close to a river. So there was some old driftwood, some rocks, some mossies, some weeds that I found nearby. And I had it the woods and stuff protruding out the tank and all the local moss and everything. I thought, that's fantastic. That was my favorite thing. And then one of my subscribers pointed out, is it only your favorite because it cost you nothing? I thought, well, maybe it is.
Well, there's
But
nothing wrong with that. If it looks good, it's even better
like
than it
it,
costs
yeah.
you nothing. That's
But I describe myself as an enthusiastic aquascaper. I don't have a favorite really. I do enjoy doing it, but my approach. So I've got books on there on aquascaping from George Farmer and stuff that describe the process. My process is get a load of stuff, throw it in a tank, move it around. Yeah, that'll do.
Until it's aesthetically pleasing to you.
Yeah. If it follows the rule of thirds or if it follows any of Takashi Amano's principles, it's purely by luck rather than judgment. I wish I did have that kind of design or creative part of my brain that would help me do these things, but yeah, it's more of a cobble it together until it looks halfway decent and decide that it's great. And that'll do.
Yeah, the tank behind you probably is Amazon swords, maybe. Is that?
Yeah. So that's some Amazon swords, some Java fern, Java moss. Again, these were just pickups from a recent auction that I went to, and someone said plant bundle £3. I'll have that. So and there they go.
And I can't even do that. I have a black thumb. I can't grow plants. I mean, I grow good Cladophora hair algae. I can grow some good blue-green algae, but
I'm great. I'm great at algae. That's my superpower as well. But I will say, come back in 3 months if it still looks like that. Then you can call me that because that's only a few weeks old.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else? So did I miss any questions? Anybody? Again, we're kind of having a conversation. I'm not really looking at the questions that are coming up.
I like Graham's IKEA tank. I quite like that tank as well.
Yeah, that's a nice tank.
That's now got my rainbow fish in it. But again, that was pure luck rather than judgment. I think it might look nice if I do this. Oh, it does. Great. Rather than knowing what I'm doing. I think that's the...
Yeah.
Or a Dragon Lair saying, I think everyone uses Aquascaper for any planted tank with a bit of rock and food.
Yeah. Aquascape is an art form, and I think next week I may have an Aquascaper on my Wednesday live stream. So we'll talk to her about what makes an aquascape and what makes it a pleasing aquascape. Because if you look at what aquascaping, the aquascaping competitions and things, the ones that look like a forest scene on a mountain, I can appreciate the beauty of it, but I don't want that as a fish tank.
Yeah.
I think
there are different definitions of aquascaping. Certainly when you get into the level of competition and things like that, and I've had the same feelings. My definition is something that you've just spent time on. If you've put some thought and effort into it, even if someone else calls it simple or generic or basic, it's still an aquascape. It's a scape that you have chosen to put things in a certain way. But it's like being I see it might not make sense to my American friends, but being a Sunday league footballer going to the Premiership. Mm-hmm. So you're still playing football, you're still enjoying it. It's fun. You've done a thing. These guys that are getting paid the big bucks are doing the amazing things. That's your show-winning tanks. Yeah. And even in the show world, because I've been to a few events where they've done aquascapes and scape-offs and things like that. Mm-hmm. The ones that win tend, or certainly over on the European side, they tend not to be too artificial looking. The ones where you have like a winding path through some rock formations and all that kind of stuff. They tend to get, that's nice, but that's not what wins. It's the ones that look like they could be natural. Yeah. But also, they can't be because they've been put together so quickly, and blows my mind when you see that kind of stuff.
I guess I tend to be an arrogant jerk. My favorite ones are the biotope type tanks. Yeah. I like a natural looking tank that you would see if you went to Malaysia or you went to, the Alabama streams, or any place that you match exactly or try to match as good as you can what you find in those specific environments.
That was one of my hardest things to do. Was I ran like a little competition on the live stream saying, right, we're going to do a subscriber tank. So we did like a bracket fight to say, right, what kind of fish are we going to put in it? What type of tank will it be? And it ended up being a biotope for an African biotope. So I had to find specific fish from specific rivers and then match them with plants and everything. The amount of effort that took compared to even some of my fanciest aquascapes, that was way more hard than it was to do the just generic nice tank, because you have to put a lot of thought and effort, and then sourcing these things individually, it became a nightmare. It was a lovely tank in the end, but yeah, it's probably the one I'm most proud of. I should have said that from my earlier one.
Yeah. So Brian asked a question about your IKEA tank.
Question with the IKEA tank size being higher, is that better for growing tanks?
You meant plants there.
Or plants. I mean, it's so for those that don't know, that my IKEA tank was, you can buy a set of shelves, glass shelves from IKEA, that if you buy 2 packets of the shelves, you can make an aquarium without having to cut glass. And it was an original idea. I definitely didn't rip off from Serpa Design, who's another YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But IKEA in the UK makes the shelves slightly different sizes than in the US. So they ended up with the sides being like 1.5 inches taller than the front and the back. So I tried to play that off as oh no, I did that on purpose so I could hang the lights that a bit higher.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So does it make a difference? I haven't noticed, but it doesn't hurt. I'll say that much. So I use a cheap Nicrew light on it that balances on those sides, and it has been growing the plants very well. And I'm not particularly green thumbed, so maybe that's that extra couple inches made all the difference.
You know, if you have floating plants, it would surely make a difference with the floating tanks, you know, with floating plants, because they have room to grow. You know, they're not going to be, you know, smashed down by the glass top or the light that's right there at the water surface. Yeah.
Geek Boy works right across the highway from IKEA, but not sure I want to get stuck in the nightmare maze of capitalism.
Yeah,
well, they do deliver as well, so you don't have to go there.
But, you know, Geek Boy, you can go there and tell stories to them.
Or you can go there and blow their minds by saying, I want to buy these shells because I'm making a fish tank. That raises a few eyebrows.
Yeah, they won't know. How are you going to do that? You know, it's not going to work.
Yes, that was when I picked them up. I was like, no, I need 3 packets of shelves. And they're like, oh, you're building a lot of shelves then? No, I'm building a fish tank. What? Yeah, I'm going to use the glass to make a fish tank.
Okay, everybody. It is now, we've been into this for 1.5 hours. It's been a good time. I appreciate you coming on, Graham.
I appreciate the invite. It's been fun.
I had a great time with you. You know, I really enjoy watching your streams. You know, for us, it comes on Friday afternoon. So, you know, I'm winding down after my week, watching you wind down, which is always good. You know,
well, I hope to see you all on Friday evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world. If you want to study up for the quiz, I'm sure there'll be a few Monaco-related questions this weekend.
Yep. And I hopefully will see you in October of this year.
Yes, in Telford.
For Telford, yeah. I just I was invited. I got an invitation this morning from the University of Southampton to go give a talk.
All
so
right.
that makes it much more doable for me, for the university to let me take a week off from teaching classes. So, you know, it's not like I could go there one night and fly back the next night. You know, it's not a.
I feel obliged to set expectations about Telford.
I know. You've already told me it. In fact, when I said something about that in your live stream, someone wrote, oh, I feel sorry for you. But, you know, Telford's just there for 2 or 3 days. You know, it'll allow my wife and I to, you know, to see other places, to maybe visit some fish stores. You know, we have a we have friends there in the UK that we can visit. So, you know,
I used to have a colleague who was based in Telford, and we had an office there that we had to visit every now and again. And when asked what the best thing about Telford was, he said, well, it's really quite close to a lot of nice places.
yeah. Or the best thing about this city is when you're leaving. That's the best.
Yes. Reasonable, cheap hotel rates.
Yeah, that's the best part. Yeah, that's for sure. As long as there's a pub or two that I can go try the local delicacies, that's the only time I drink is when I go out of town or go to a conference or something. So, even though
I will bring my spreadsheet and then we can sample.
Okay, we'll make sure we have the best one. Because I already told you what my favorite UK beer. That's Samuel Smith. Nut brown ale, and you kind of pot it like, oh, it's okay, nothing, but I like the dark beer. So
yeah,
I know you like the pale ales and things, the IPAs.
Yes, I like my hazy beers, it turns out.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll have to try at least one, that's for sure. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And for those of you who are watching the replay, I appreciate you coming here. So on Saturday, 4:00 Pacific time, we'll have another stream, the California crew. We'll, 3 or 4 of us from California will talk about whatever comes to mind. Last week we talked
the best
about
kind of streams.
Yeah, we talked about Star Wars, even though we try to keep it fishy. You never know where it goes. But have a good day, have a good night, everybody. Hug your
Thanks
family.
for having me on.
Do your water changes and everything will be okay. See ya.
Thank you.